Mom, I need your help. It's about Dad.
I was taken aback. Although my daughter, Emma, and my husband, Scott, weren't exactly close, there was no apparent conflict between them. Scott is known for his mild temperament and have never raised his voice at Emma. What's wrong? Did Dad do something? I asked just as the doorbell rang. This marked the beginning of a trial for them. My name is Michelle, a 38-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live in an apartment with my husband and daughter. Scott is a 40-year-old office worker, and our daughter, Emma, is a 13-year-old in her second year of middle school. I had always thought we were just a regular family, but I was about to discover how wrong I was. One day, Scott came home unusually early. Welcome back. You're home early today.
Yeah, I finished work early. Is Emma back?
Not yet. It's her tutoring day.
I see. What time will she be back?
Probably around 8 p.m. Is something up with Emma?
No, nothing. By the way, I'm in the mood for a beer. Could you pick some up for me?
Sure. It's unusual for you to want beer. Scott wasn't much of a drinker, so we rarely kept alcohol at home. I decided to go out and buy some beer. Upon returning home after buying some beer, expecting a quiet evening, I found myself alone in the silence of our house. My husband, usually the first to greet me, was conspicuously absent. It was then my phone buzzed with a message that caught me off guard. That text message was from my husband, explaining that a last-minute work emergency had cropped up, forcing him to stay out for the night. With a heavy sigh, I placed the beer, now with no one to enjoy it, into the fridge, its cold interior a stark contrast to the warmth I was expecting at home. Time seemed to drag on until my daughter finally made her way back from cram school. In an attempt to break the ice and inject some normalcy into our evening, I cheerfully asked her, "Welcome back, honey. How was your study session at the cram school?" Her response was lackluster at best, a mere,
"It was nothing special,"
delivered with a shrug that seemed to carry the weight of the world. Her indifference stung a little, but I chalked it up to teenage moods and went about preparing our dinner, which was now later than usual. The peace was abruptly shattered when she emerged from her room, her steps heavy with indignation, confronting me with an accusation.
"Hey, Mom, you went into my room, didn't you?"
I was taken aback, responding with genuine surprise. "I haven't been in your room. What's wrong?" It's a rule I hold dear, respecting her space and privacy, especially during these tumultuous teenage years. She persisted.
"It just feels different."
I tried to reassure her. "I promise I haven't been in there today." "Are you missing something?" Her suspicions seemed to fade as she admitted.
"Maybe I was mistaken. I just thought something was off. Sorry, Mom."
I couldn't help but lecture a little. You know, if you kept your room a bit more organized, you might not jump to such conclusions. "Come on, let's have dinner." I suspected the real issue was her chaotic room where things frequently went missing, lost in the disarray typical of a teenager's sanctuary. During dinner, she kept casting glances my way, a clear sign she was wrestling with something she wanted to say. Taking notice, I probed gently, "What's on your mind? Is there something you'd like to talk about?" She paused, her fork midway to her plate, then looked up with a resolve I hadn't seen before.
"Mom, I'm really struggling with something about Dad, and I need your help,"
she confessed. Her words took me by surprise. My husband has always been the epitome of patience, hardly the type to raise his voice, let alone cause our daughter distress. "Was it something Dad did that's bothering you?" I gently probed my daughter for more insight into her earlier distress, but our intimate conversation was abruptly interrupted by the doorbell's unexpected chime late in the evening. Peering through the door's digital viewer, I was greeted by the sight of my daughter's teacher, Mrs. Susan, alongside a woman whose face was unfamiliar to me. Mrs. Susan, with a hint of reluctance in her voice, apologized for the untimely disturbance.
"I'm terribly sorry to come by at such a late hour, but we need a moment of your time to discuss a matter of some urgency."
"Of course, just give me a moment to open the door," I responded, with a mix of curiosity and concern as I assured them into our home. "What brings you here at this hour?" I inquired, leading them into the living room, my daughter trailing behind, her expression a blend of curiosity and anxiety. My daughter, Emma, looked towards her teacher, a mix of confusion and concern evident in her eyes.
"What's happening, Mrs. Susan?"
The teacher, adopting a more serious demeanor, turned her attention to Emma.
"There's something we need to clarify with you. Have you by any chance taken Katie's smartphone?"
She inquired, nodding towards the woman beside her, introduced as Katie's mother, Jessica.
"Katie's phone? No, I don't have it. Has it gone missing?"
Emma replied, her bewilderment clear, not expecting the conversation to take such a turn. However, the situation escalated as Jessica's patience snapped. her voice rising in accusation.
Don't pretend you don't know. I'm aware of the bullying you've inflicted on Katie. She's been inconsolable, claiming you took her phone.
Taken aback by the sudden allegation, I turned to Emma, searching her face for the truth. Emma, is there any truth to this?
Absolutely not, Mom. I'm clueless about this whole situation.
She defended herself, her voice laced with sincerity and a hint of distress. Mrs. Susan attempted to mediate, her tone gentle yet firm.
Emma, Katie has been saying you've had her phone for over a week now and haven't returned it. Can you shed some light on this?
Before Emma could articulate a response, Jessica, fueled by a mother's protective instinct, cut in.
Mrs. Susan, you must understand, my daughter has been enduring bullying at her hands for quite some time. Allow me just a moment to present the evidence.
With a determined motion, Jessica retrieved her phone and dialed a number. Within seconds, a distinctive ringtone pierced the silence, emanating from Emma's bedroom upstairs.
There, you hear that? That's unmistakably Katie's ringtone. I insist you return it immediately.
Jessica declared, her voice a mix of triumph and demand. Upon entering Emma's room, my heart heavy with apprehension, I swiftly located an unfamiliar smartphone concealed beneath her bed. Grasping this unexpected piece of evidence, I made my way back to the living room, presenting the device to Jessica with a mixture of confusion and concern. I found this in my daughter's room. Could this possibly belong to Katie? The question hung in the air, charged with tension and uncertainty. Jessica's response was swift, her voice tinged with a blend of relief and accusation.
Yes, that's definitely Katie's phone. I sincerely hope this is the last time we have to address my daughter being coerced by yours.
Emma, tears streaming down her cheeks, fervently denied any wrongdoing, her voice quivering with emotion.
I honestly have no idea how Katie's phone ended up in my room. I didn't take it, I promise.
The sincerity in her plea made me pause. Her distress didn't seem feigned. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to protect her, to find a resolution that didn't involve further confrontation. Perhaps it would be best if we continued this discussion another day. Emma is clearly upset, and I think we could all benefit from some time to process, I suggested, hoping to diffuse the situation. Mrs. Susan nodded in agreement, her voice calm and reassuring.
Yes, that might be wise. It's quite late, and this has been a lot for everyone to take in.
Jessica, however, was visibly unsatisfied, her frustration palpable.
So you're just going to stand by the bully? My daughter is the victim here. I came seeking justice to prove the bullying with Mrs. Susan's assistance.
I understand your frustration, but let's approach this with cooler heads tomorrow.
Mrs. Susan proposed, her tone diplomatic yet firm. Despite Jessica's reluctance, she was eventually persuaded to leave, though her anger simmered just below the surface. Left alone with Emma, her sobs filling the room, I was at a loss. The evening's revelations had left me reeling, struggling to piece together a puzzle I hadn't known existed. It's okay, Emma. We'll figure this out together, I soothed, holding her close. Her next words, spoken between sobs, struck a chord of deep concern within me.
Dad, he's been so angry, accusing me of bullying, but I don't understand why he would say that. I've done nothing wrong.
The revelation that my husband had been harboring suspicions of Emma's involvement in bullying, unbeknownst to me, was a jolt. It was clear that a serious conversation was overdue. Emma, if Dad ever makes you feel scared again, promise me you'll let me listen. We need to understand what's really going on, I urged, desperate to protect her and uncover the truth behind the tangled web of accusations and misunderstandings.
I will, Mom.
She whispered, her voice small but filled with trust. The following day, as my husband returned from work, I pretended to have forgotten something at the store and left the house, my phone in hand, ready to capture any exchange that might occur in my absence. Soon enough, my phone rang and I listened intently to the heated argument that unfolded between my husband and Emma. The voices that filled the room were fraught with tension, my husband's accusations flying wildly.
Hey Emma, what are you even learning at school? Bullying is the lowest of the low.
His words were met with Emma's bewildered defense.
What are you talking about? I haven't bullied anyone.
The argument spiraled as my husband continued his tirade.
You liar, you're completely rotten to the core. Hear me well. You're to stop this bullying immediately.
Emma's response was a mix of indignation and despair.
That's horrible. On what grounds do you accuse me of such things?
I've been told you stole a friend's smartphone. You're at the bottom of the barrel.
He accused. This was a side of my husband I scarcely recognized. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by one of unwavering condemnation. The revelation that he knew of the smartphone incident, a detail Emma and I had yet to share with him, added layers of confusion and betrayal to the already tense atmosphere. Unable to bear the weight of silence and secrets any longer, I made my way back home, bursting into Emma's room to find the argument at its peak. "Enough, Scott. How can you say such terrible things to Emma?" I demanded, my presence catching my husband off guard.
What the? Weren't you out shopping?
He stumbled over his words, clearly surprised. I overheard everything. Emma wouldn't do such thing. How can you, as her father, not stand by her side? I implored, seeking a semblance of reason in the chaos. His rebuttal was swift and cutting.
As her father, it's my responsibility to ensure she faces the consequences of her actions. It's this attitude of yours, always protecting her, that's led us here.
He retorted, his words slicing through the tense air. How can you say such a thing? My voice trailed off, the weight of the situation pressing down.
We need to consider transferring Emma to a different school. We've already got a victim of her bullying here. Who knows how many more there are?
He concluded, his mind made up, leaving no room for my input or Emma's defense. I and my daughter Emma found ourselves in a relentless cycle of criticism from Scott, which led to severe sleep deprivation and an accumulation of exhaustion for both of us. On a particularly troubling day, I received an urgent call from her school, informing me that Emma had collapsed and was currently resting in the nurse's office, necessitating my immediate presence. Rushing to the school, I was greeted with the sight of Emma, already awake, and learned from the nurse that the underlying issue was sleep deprivation, prompting a decision for Emma to leave school early that day. Worn out and visibly distressed, Emma confided in me, saying,
Mom, I can't stand the thought of going back home. I wish we could go to Grandma's. I just can't bear living with Dad anymore. I want to get out of that house.
I deeply empathized with my daughter's sentiments, especially given Scott's unexpected and drastic change in behavior, triggered by the suspicion of Emma being subjected to bullying. Seeking a solution, I reached out to my own parents, requesting if we could temporarily stay with them until the tensions at home subsided. I also took the step of informing Scott about this plan, to which he responded,
That sounds like a good idea. You should go back to your parents' house and stay close to Emma.
His tone was surprisingly upbeat, which only intensified my frustration considering he was directly responsible for Emma's suffering. Certainly, I'll be staying at my parents' place for the foreseeable future. Depending on how things evolve, I might not come back, I stated with determination.
Well, that's okay. It's ultimately the result of Emma's own actions, and you, as her mother, bear some responsibility too. I'll arrange to send your belongings over. Just take your time and settle in there.
Scott remarked, his casual demeanor starkly contrasting the gravity of the situation. He also mentioned,
Perhaps it would be wise to look into transferring Emma to a school closer to your parents' house.
I haven't made up my mind about that yet. But for now, I won't be returning home tonight, I clarified.
Got it. Make sure to rest up and take care.
Scott replied, my parents were deeply concerned about their granddaughter's well-being and wholeheartedly agreed to have us stay. Upon arriving at my grandparents' home, Emma, clearly exhausted from the ordeal, fell asleep almost instantly. Seeing my daughter finally at peace allowed me to also find solace in a restful night's sleep, the first in what felt like ages. The following morning, Emma was still deeply asleep, her calm breathing a testament to the safety and comfort she felt in her grandparents' home. After spending the night at my parents' place, I felt a slight relief from the exhaustion that had been weighing me down. As the morning light seeped through the curtains, my thoughts began to drift towards what needed to be done next. Realizing we had hastily left our home was barely anything but the clothes we were wearing, it dawned on me that a trip back to gather some essentials was unavoidable. Determined to steer clear of any awkward encounters with Scott, I meticulously planned my return during his working hours, aiming to discreetly collect my belongings and Emma's school essentials. My mission was clear: pack everything we might need into a suitcase without stirring any drama. Once I finished packing, I felt a parching thirst and opened the fridge for something to quench my thirst. As I reached for an iced coffee, a memory unexpectedly surfaced. It was about that one time Scott had oddly requested me to buy beer, despite his usual indifference to alcohol. I chuckled at the memory, only to realize that not a single can of the beer I bought remained. Puzzled, I mumbled to myself, did he actually finish all that beer? My curiosity piqued, leading my gaze towards the trash can, where I noticed several beer cans disposed of carelessly, threatening to spill over the brim. As I reached out to tidy up, a startling discovery stopped me dead in my tracks. One of the cans bore the unmistakable mark of red lipstick. A whirlwind of emotions engulfed me, leaving me momentarily paralyzed with shock. How did this happen, and what did it mean? The journey back to my parents' house after that revelation is a blur in my memory. The next thing I knew, I was pushing the door open, the suitcase in tow. Emma's voice, bright and unsuspecting, greeted me.
Oh, Mom, welcome back.
That simple greeting snapped me out of my daze, reminding me of the immediate need to focus on Emma's well-being, pushing the bewildering discovery of the lipstick-stained can to the furthest corners of my mind. Observing Emma, now visibly more vibrant after a restful sleep, I thought it best to let her stay at my parents' house for a little while longer. Feeling a pressing need to address Emma's schooling, I reached out to her teacher to explain her absence for the upcoming week. The response was heartening yet unexpected.
Emma's classmates are all concerned for her. We all wish for her speedy recovery.
I found myself questioning whether Emma's teacher and classmates were genuinely concerned about her, especially since she had been the one bullied. Despite my mixed emotions, I found myself defending Emma. It might sound odd coming from us, but Emma is genuinely having a hard time.
No, Mrs. Michelle, your daughter Emma is not the perpetrator here. Our investigation within the classroom has revealed that it was actually Katie who had been spreading falsehood.
The teacher's words echoed in my mind. Could you explain that? I urged, my voice laced with a mixture of confusion and desperation.
Upon scrutinizing the events following the alleged smartphone theft, we discovered a lack of evidence to support the bullying accusations against Emma.
She explained, her tone somber yet reassuring.
Interestingly, we found that Katie had been in contact with several classmates on her phone even after the day she claimed it was stolen, which effectively debunked her story.
My mind raced as I processed her words. So, the accusations of my daughter stealing the phone were not truth? I pressed, seeking clarity amidst the chaos.
When questioned again, Katie admitted that she was acting under her mother's instructions, pretending to be bullied.
The teacher disclosed, her voice steady but fraught with concern. The revelation left me reeling. Why didn't you tell me sooner? This misunderstanding has caused my daughter to endure daily accusations from her father, pushing her to the edge of a mental breakdown. I found myself raising my voice, a mix of anger and desperation coloring my tone. The teacher attempted to pacify the situation.
I understand how distressing this must be for you. I've relayed all pertinent information to her father, who has since been in touch frequently, inquiring about the bullying situation.
She assured me. I stood there, momentarily lost for words, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Despite the teacher's initial reluctance to share personal details about Katie's mother, my persistence unveiled a shocking connection. Jessica, Katie's mom, was a single mother and a colleague of my husband. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, suggesting a sinister collaboration between my husband and Jessica to frame my daughter. The recollection of a beer can with lipstick stains, the same shade Jessica often wore, suddenly made a harrowing sense. My husband told me to buy beer, leaving him alone at home. It was the perfect opportunity to plant Katie's phone in Emma's room. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Reflecting on the woman, Jessica, who worked with my husband, her lipstick's color matched the residue on the can in our trash. Overwhelmed by anger and betrayal, I vowed silently, they will pay for this. I didn't hesitate to contact a reputable private investigation firm to delve into my husband's suspected infidelity. The evidence swiftly gathered confirmed my worst fears. Scott had not wasted any time in exploiting our absence to entertain his affair partner, Jessica, in our family home. The investigator provided me with indisputable photographic evidence of their rendezvous. Driven by a need for justice, I decided to take matters into my own hands and reached out to an unexpected ally for assistance. Together, we lay in wait near our home, listening intently to the audio surveillance I had previously installed. The evening air grew tense as Scott and Jessica, locked in an intimate embrace, made their way into our apartment. The device transmitted their conversation with disturbing clarity.
I love this place. I can't wait to move in.
It's a shame I can only enjoy this with you while my wife and daughter are away.
Scott lamented.
When are you going to divorce her? I'm tired of waiting.
Jessica pressed.
Soon, I plan to send Emma away to another school. That will give a chance to separate.
Scott plotted.
Make it quick. Despite our efforts to fabricate the bullying story, that teacher turned out to be more competent than anticipated.
Jessica grumbled.
Don't worry, I've told the teacher to keep my wife out of it. She surely doesn't suspect we made the whole thing up.
Scott assured her.
And to think my daughter so easily admitted to lying. What a useless child. I only keep her for the child support.
Jessica scoffed.
Pretending to be the doting husband is exhausting. You're the only one I love.
Scott declared.
Me too.
With my heart pounding and fury coursing through my veins, I interrupted their treacherous plot by making a dramatic entrance.
What are you doing here?
Scott's shock at seeing me was matched only by Jessica's horror upon laying eyes on the man beside me, her ex-husband, David, and Katie's father.
Ah, why are you here?
David's outrage was palpable as he confronted Jessica for using their daughter as a pawn in her sordid affair.
You used Katie as a pawn for your affair. You're despicable. I'm taking Katie with me. You're no mother to her.
He condemned. He declared his intention to take full custody of Katie, denouncing Jessica's fitness as a mother. You both will pay for this. To think you'd stoop so low, hurting your own daughter just to enjoy your affair. You're perfect for each other, both the lowest of the low. Get ready. I seethed with fury. Their selfishness and deceit had caused irrevocable harm to Emma, and I was determined to see justice served. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I initiated a divorce from Scott and took legal action against both him and Jessica, seeking reparation for the emotional and psychological damage they inflicted on Emma and me. Jessica had been receiving a substantial amount of child support from her ex-husband, but the fallout from this scandal led to her losing custody of Katie. Consequently, Katie was taken in by her father, and the child support payments Jessica had relied on were terminated. Before transferring schools to live with her father, Katie apologized Emma for her part in the orchestrated lies. It was a bittersweet moment, revealing that Katie's actions were driven by a desire for her mother's attention, even if it meant resorting to deceit. The affair between Scott and Jessica, both working at the same company, quickly became the subject of office gossip, leading to Jessica's termination and Scott being sidelined from his career trajectory. With his prospects dashed, Scott found himself unable to afford the mortgage on our apartment, moving into a less expensive living situation. Meanwhile, Jessica vanished, leaving Scott to juggle multiple jobs to make ends meet and pay off the alimony on his own. I found solace and support in my parents, moving into a modest apartment with Emma. My parents own a grocery store, offering me a chance to contribute and find purpose in helping run the family business. Having assisted with the store before my marriage, I quickly readjusted to the work, finding it both fulfilling and therapeutic. Emma's resilience and newfound happiness, thriving in a stable and loving environment, became my greatest source of strength and motivation.